No testimony can be taken from the floor. When you come to the podium, state your name, and please speak clearly into the microphone because this meeting is being recorded. Applicants with cases before the board are allotted a presentation time of 10 minutes. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the board or staff regarding the case. Any member of the public may address the board in intervals of 3 minutes or 5 minutes if by a spokesperson for an established body or group of 3 or more. The applicant then has 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The board reserves the right to amend these limits on a case-by-case basis. So now we're going to swear in those who wish to speak. So those of you who plan to speak must be sworn. If you are here as an applicant or here to speak in any case, please stand at this time and raise your right hand. Okay, great. Do you affirm or attest that the testimony you will give today is the truth and nothing but the truth? Okay, great. Thank you. You can sit down. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Ms. Hasty.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon with the consent agenda. So the first item on the consent agenda is the approval of the June 1st, 2023 minutes. The next item is special exception 2023-0020 SE 3031 North Main Street, special exception to permit an alternative parking surface. Yes. The next item on the consent agenda is case 2023-0021V 734 Kipling Drive. This is a variance request to the side yard setback standard. And the final item on the consent agenda is case 2023-0023 SE 2400 Forest Drive. And this is a special exception request to permit an accessory drive-through facility used for an eating establishment. And that completes the consent agenda for this afternoon. At this time, do any members of the board wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Just read. We're about to vote on those. So if anyone's here, please come. Will you please come to the podium?
We can't really understand what you're saying because all the sounds are running together. If you could speak a little closer to the microphone, we probably could understand.
Yes, ma'am. Are you here for McFadden Street?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So that's on the regular agenda. We're about to vote on the consent agenda. So that case, we're not voting on that case right now.
I know.
Yeah.
But I'm still saying we want to hear what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am. Understood. All right. So seeing nobody from the audience. So does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes and consent agenda?
Make a motion we approve the I move we approve the consent agenda subject to staff comments.
Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Any opposed? All right. Motion's approved. Okay.
Did you ask if the public would like to remove an item? I think you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will move on to the regular agenda. So the first item on the regular agenda was actually a deferral from last month. It's case 2023-0013 SE. This is 1818 McFadden Street, and this is the special exception request to permit a barbershop as a home occupation. And I believe the applicant is here to present his request.
Mr. Mender, yes, sir. If you would just come to the podium and run through the application again for the special exception.
Yes, sir. Like I mentioned last time,
Can you speak? Can you pull the microphone up a little bit? Oh, 'cause
Yes,
it's the
sir.
microphone on.
Yeah.
Okay.
yes, sir. Like I mentioned last time, I'm not trying to make this a permanent barbershop. I'm not trying to advertise as a barbershop. I have certain clientele that was call me and say, well, I need my hair cut. You wouldn't even know it's a barbershop. This is my neighborhood too. From where I grew up in and where it was and where it is now. And it's a quiet neighborhood. I would never disturb my own neighborhood. I would never have parking up and down the street where no one would be able to get in. And like I said, if I had anybody that come, maybe only one person that would come that can park in my driveway at the present moment, and that would be it. It's a nursery down the street. They have plenty of parking down there. Sometimes there'll be park on the road, and I don't know the situation on that hand, but my situation is just like anybody else would live in that neighborhood and just say, okay, he lives in a house. You wouldn't know I own a barbershop, or y'all wouldn't run a barbershop. And the reason I want to do this, because I want to do this in a right and respectful way. It's plenty of people that say I'm cutting hair, I'm doing hair inside the home that don't have a license and not trying to do stuff out of order. I want to do stuff in order and just have respect for my neighbors.
I have a quick question, and I did drive by and saw the sign up, so glad all that. Were you able to talk with the neighborhood at all in between last month's meeting and this and today?
Say again
Were
now?
you able to talk with the neighborhood at all between last month's meeting and today?
I talked with a couple people, and I told them what I was trying to do, and they was like, well, I don't see a whole bunch of traffic that's up and down the street. And a couple people like, well, I didn't even know you had was cutting hair there. I said, well, nobody would know because it's not advertised like that.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for
I have
Mr.
a question.
Mender? Yeah.
Mr. Mender, thank you for coming back again this time. We appreciate it. And thank you, John, for riding by and making sure that the sign and everything. I know we had a problem with that last time. I know that the chair asked if you spoke with anyone in the neighborhood about your temporary barbershop situation. I'm wondering, did you speak with any of the individuals that signed the petition that was presented last time we met about your proposed temporary barbershop idea?
No, sir, I did not.
Is there any particular reason why?
I went around and I didn't really know who signed the petition. And I know one was, my neighbor lived next door. And I even tried to say hello. He wouldn't say nothing to me.
What about any of the people that were in attendance at the meeting last month? Did you speak to any of them about the?
That was the person that was at the meeting last month, Mr. Counts and Ms. Counts. They live right next door to me, and I tried to, I'm respectful. I say hello. You didn't say nothing. And for reason, I don't know, because of this situation. And I tried to speak to him on several occasions.
So just to be clear, you didn't speak to any of the people that were here last month as well?
That's the person. That was the two people that was here last month. Besides I forgot the woman name, the one that's over the neighborhood association. And I didn't speak back with her because after that session, we sit and talk for a few minutes.
So you all did talk?
Well, we talked when the session was over. And after we...
At the meeting here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I believe you were here, and, after the session was over, we sit there and talk.
Any resolution there or?
The only thing she said is, you can work in, anybody barbershop, but I'm not choosing to work in anybody barbershop. I want to just make a starting point for myself and exceed to somewhere else. And like I said before, if any paperwork I would have to sign for a certain amount of time, I would be willing to do that until I advance and go to another spot. I'm not trying to make that a permanent spot.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Any
sir.
questions or? No good. All right, thank you. All right, anyone in the audience like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am. Will you just please state your name for the record? Yeah.
Hey, my name is Alexina Fergus, and I'm president of the Jones McDonald Neighborhood Association, and have been for quite a while. Our neighborhood is very old.
Do you mind just pulling the mic down a little bit?
No, I don't mind at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I say, as president of the Jones McDonald Neighborhood Association, I'm very proud of our neighborhood. And we have a residential neighborhood, an old neighborhood. I'm almost 80 myself. Most of the people in our neighborhood now are dying. They're dying because we lost one, had funeral last week, 108 years old, Elise Martin. The week before that, Miss Hattie Donald, 94 years old. We've lost about 20 people in the last 23 years, but now we still have people living in the community, and it is a residential community, and it's quiet. The streets are narrow, and there's no parking. I did not talk to Mr. Mender last week to tell him anything except if you want a barbershop, then it has to be in a commercial area, not in a residential area. And we realized that once you change the classification for our neighborhood, it's changed. You can't go back. It's going to be commercial. And we are old people. We don't need businesses in our community. The streets are narrow. And in our community, we have a preschool, we have elementary school, we have middle school, and we have a high school. A couple of blocks away, we have 2 colleges. So we have children up and down the streets, and there are no sidewalks. McFadden Street is very narrow. And so the kids walk in the street. There is no parking at Mr. Mender's except in his driveway, which means that if you have a business there, I mean, my dad was a barber. Anybody that came in the door, they said, the only thing he said was, "You're next," not you have to have an appointment. So we realize what this means. This means that our entire neighborhood would change. So it cannot happen and it should not happen. And it's depending on you guys to tell us what we can do in our neighborhood. And that's not right. We do not want the classification for our neighborhood to change from residential to commercial, and that's what will have to happen. If it changes to commercial, we know it can't change back and it won't change back. And anyone else can come in and say, "I want a barbershop too. I want a candy shop too. I want this." And we can't stand it. There's no sidewalks again, and I want to tell you, this is where we live. And this is where we want to live. And we certainly look forward to working with you to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay. I can see the confusion when you see that sign going up talking about zoning, but the classification for your neighborhood, the zoning district is residential single family. And
Yes.
what we're deciding on isn't rezoning that. What we're deciding on in the application is a special exception to permit a one-chair barber shop inside a home. So if anyone else tries to do anything as well, there are requirements. Have you read the requirements and the conditions required for us to approve it?
Well, let me tell you, I might look a little stupid, but I'm not. Okay? I do know that once anything changes, it's easier to go back and have it changed again. We don't want it changed. We don't want a special exception. We want our community to stay as it is. In fact, we need sidewalks. We need a wider street. We need help from the city to keep the streets clean. We have so many problems that just don't register simply because our neighborhood is old and it's black. So that's what we deal with. So if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else will too. So we have to depend on this board to help us help ourselves. So we know that once there's one change, it's so much easier to get another and another and another. So, yes.
Have you looked at the requirements it takes to approve a change or to allow a change?
Excuse me?
Have you seen the requirements it takes
You want to read them
allow
to
a
me?
change? No, I'm asking you if you've seen them.
I thought I did.
Okay.
And would you mind if, I'll save my comment for the comments.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Whatever you feel like.
I did call the zoning office because it was our understanding that if a sign is placed by the zoning board or any other city in the city of Columbia and it is removed, then that voids the request. That happened last month.
Yeah.
You guys didn't do a thing.
That's why we deferred it to this month.
Yeah, but why not do what you're supposed to do? That voids the request.
Because it needed to have a proper notice. So that's why we deferred it to this month. It doesn't mean we're voting for it.
We knew about it, and we have signatures of everybody in the community.
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, the couple that young man referred to, they're sitting right there, both of them. I'm standing right here, and I talked to him after the meeting. So what he said was,
So this, and just what this is a special exception request because the use is allowed with a special exception. So they have to come and we discuss it. We invite the public to discuss it. So it doesn't mean we're voting for it or against it. Just anything in the future, if it comes up in your neighborhood and needs a special exception, the property's not being rezoned. That has to go through a totally different process.
well, then we are here to ask you to deny the request for a special exception.
I think something
Yeah.
needs to be stated. Could you, I think there's some confusion around what a special exception means. And I think what the neighborhood is thinking is that this request labeled a special exception is somehow going to create a change for the neighborhood, which is not the case. And I think there's some confusion there. Could you please help us define what special
Sure.
exception means in this case?
Yeah,
per this case?
so again, so it's not a request to rezone the property. So the actual zoning classification of the property would remain the same in this case. This is a special exception, which basically there are certain uses in our ordinance that require a special exception and board approval to approve that use. And this is, home occupation is an accessory use that requires a special exception to be approved. So it would be, it's reviewing a request for a special exception for a home occupation. So it's an accessory to using the home as the residence.
So I just want to be clear so everyone understands. So when you say special exception for a residence, this literally is only in reference to, it will only be in reference to the specific home in question. It
Yes.
has no basis or effect on any of the homes around it, correct?
Correct.
So if this special exception, just say for instance it did get passed today, was granted, it would only affect his home. This isn't a blanket license for other businesses to be established in
Right.
the area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that needs to
And
be, because I
there-
think there's some confusion there.
Yes, and there is a list of conditions that the applicant would have to sign. They have to come into the zoning office to receive their business license, and part of that review is them signing the home occupation conditions that they're agreeing to, that they will meet those conditions in the home with that occupation.
Well, we have a concern anyway. The applicant actually removed your sign from his yard, and we understand that once you remove the sign from a residence, that's placed there by the zoning board or any other board, that voids the request.
And that's why we're back today. That's exactly why we came back
So
today.
why?
We would not have asked you or your neighbors to come back again 30 days later
Did you read the
because
minutes?
of that issue, because of the issue with the sign.
It did
So
not reflect that in the
that's-
minutes, Mr. Duvall.
That's very black and white. There's no gray area there. It
Yeah,
isn't anyone that didn't do
we've
their job.
addressed the sign issue, so we're moving.
We only decided to come back here today because there was a sign issue and we didn't. There was no proof of why it was moved, or that's the only reason we came back here today. No one is trying to do anything.
Okay. Well, I'm
Out
going
of
to
the
tell
ordinary
you
or out of
that
order.
we have the signatures of everybody in the community. If you want to look and go down the addresses, we have everyone in the community signing
question.
this list.
How many signatures on that list?
We have about 30. About 30.
30 signatures?
Yes.
And,
You want to, let me give you the boundaries of our neighborhood first, Mr. Duvall.
No, you're fine. Thank you very
Because
much. I
that's
just have
right.
one other question. So there were 30 signatures on the
Right.
list. How many of the signatures on that list had a conversation with the gentleman that wants to establish his home as a barbershop?
Let me ask you something.
I'm
Why?
just asking a question.
Did he go and ask anyone? He didn't go. He didn't approach anyone. Why would we go out of our way to approach him when he has a request?
I don't know. I was just asking a question.
All right. He stood here and said he talked to me after the meeting.
All right, let's keep comments to the podium, please. Do we have anything else we want to ask her? Your
Okay.
points are well taken. I mean,
Okay.
that's why you're here, and we appreciate you being here.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
I might note too that, as I told you, our community is old. Okay, there are 2 parking spaces in that driveway, and none on the street. Okay, usually those 2 parking spaces are taken up.
Yes, ma'am. We
So
understand
that's
that.
what we want you to know too. And we want you to know that we really are, we feel strongly that you should honor our request, the request of the community.
Okay, thank you. Time's up. Thank you. All right, Mr. Bender, you have, or Mr. Mendersard, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal if you want to come up here and say anything else.
And with the sidewalk, she's right, it's about sidewalks, but every side street that we live in doesn't have a sidewalk. Now, Bonneville Road has a sidewalk, and I believe Waits Road, they have a sidewalk, but the side streets and the way people come up and down that street, I wouldn't want nobody to park on the side anyway, because people come up and down the street so fast sometimes they can swipe somebody's car. That's why I said with one person they can park in my driveway. And I don't have nothing to do with the people down there. And like I said before, I'm not trying to disturb no one. I'm not trying to get no one upset. I'm not trying to go against my neighbors in any form, way, or fashion. I want to respect just like they do. And I'll speak to them just like that. I'm not trying to disturb. I'm not trying to say, well, this is so-and-so barbershop, this, and you come get your hair cut here. No, it doesn't work like that. Anybody wants to get their hair cut, they will have to call me. Matter of fact, I was out of town last weekend. Couple people had called me, John, are you able to? And no, I'm not here. You can't come by my house. I'm not here. And it was like, okay, we respect it. You just call me, let me know when you're available. I say yes.
Okay.
All right.
Simple enough. All right, thank you. All right, now moving to board discussion. If anybody would like to start it off. Well,
Yeah.
and we,
Does anybody else want to speak?
before he came up, yeah.
Yeah.
Hope, should we go ahead and let some others come up?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Gotta wait till you-
Will you please state your name into the microphone?
Curtis Counts.
Curtis? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet y'all.
Lean into the microphone a little bit for us so we can hear you with the
Want me
mask
to take my
on.
mask off
No,
right
you can
now?
leave it on. Just
Okay.
lean in a little bit so we can hear you.
Okay.
While you're speaking.
Well,
Yeah, please.
you
Yeah,
asked a
please go
question.
ahead. Yes,
Somebody
sir.
asked a question, didn't he? Somebody asked a question of me. That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah.
Are you speaking about the case, or do you have a question, or?
No, I thought I was called to come.
If you don't have anything to say, then you can
No,
be
no.
excused, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to open up the floor for other
Yeah.
people that want to make comments
Well,
on the case.
I like to say, first of all, he never said anything to us about what he was planning on doing. He didn't say anything. And we live right next door. And I know his parents, they live there, good people, whatever. We had to find out outside of being neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am, good afternoon.
good afternoon. My name is Margie Brooks. I live at 1824 Pennsylvania Avenue. My house was built in 1960. That's how long we've been in the neighborhood. We have still quite a few children in the neighborhood, okay? We still have the elementary school, Carver. We have W.A. Perry Junior High School, and we have C.A. Johnson High School. Now, within that vicinity, from down to Ebenezer Baptist Church, Second Address Baptist Church, all the way to W.A. Perry, we have been very vigilant about making sure that we keep that neighborhood as a resident, okay? On Two Notch, there are a lot of commercial buildings. There are a lot of buildings to be rented, okay? This young man, I have never came in contact with him, but when I heard that he was trying to establish a small business within his home, so why can't he go somewhere and rent a booth? Why can't he go and establish ownership on a commercial building? Why bring it into the home? This is what we are complaining about. If you let one person do it, then the next one gonna be saying, oh, well, I wanna start a laundry service, or I wanna start a candy store, and it goes on and on. We've been working hard to preserve that neighborhood. And quite a few people who've been there, those homes were built from 1955 on. The area is still decent. We still have riffraff. We still need assistance in cleaning up the streets, doing better. But the homes are maintained the best you can. A lot of them have died out, okay? The majority of the people that was in that neighborhood were doctors, lawyers, teachers, and of other professions, okay? It wasn't an easy task to maintain these homes, and we still fight today to keep the neighborhood is pretty sound, it's pretty quiet, okay? Moving towards Two Notch Road, you got a lot, and the police officers have been coming into the area to help us clean out the debris and get the undesirables. Now, if he put that shop there, there's no guarantee that he's gonna have one person here and there, now and then, coming in to do a barber shop, maintain someone's hair, whatever. It's obvious he doesn't cut his hair, okay? So why do we let him use that home to establish a business. Let him go and get a professional outside the resident. We're not saying that he shouldn't be a barber, but we just don't want him to establish that in a residential area where we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. All right, anybody else like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Please state
Good
your name.
afternoon. My name is Eleanor Dalton, Eleanor Woods Dalton. I reside at 1832 St. Louis Avenue. St. Louis is one street over from McFadden, okay? I have no problem with Mr., is it Minder? Mender. Mr. Mender wanting to have a barbershop. I applaud his entrepreneurship, but not in our neighborhood. Just like it has been previously stated, there's no sidewalks and there's no parking. So if people come to get their hair cut, they're going to be parking on the street, and the streets are narrow as it is. So I just think, I don't know if what y'all discuss and about it. Have y'all been to the neighborhood?
Yes, ma'am.
I know you said you did. Okay, all right. But you haven't. You did? Okay. Yeah, it's a quiet neighborhood. The city has a young lady that does enforcement, and she was on the street on St. Louis a couple of weeks ago, and she said to me, she said, you know, this is a really quiet neighborhood. She said, I don't have any problems around here. And we want to keep it that way. It's been that way. Our house was built in 1954. So, you know, that tells you how old I am, okay? But it's a brick house and it's still standing, okay? They ain't falling apart yet. But it's a nice, quiet neighborhood, and we want to keep it that way. I'm not saying that the barbershop is gonna be loud, but a barbershop is a business. Our neighborhood is a residential neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much. All right, would anyone else like to speak? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Carmen Broadwater.
You can pull that down a little bit if you want to, yeah.
My name is Carmen Broadwater. And Mr. Mendes, well, I've been knowing his family for a long time because he stays across the street from us. And I don't think that his father, if it was me or anybody trying to open up something, he would be not agree about that. So we want to keep our neighborhood just like it is. And I do not want any cars parking in my driveway and stuff like that. So, you know, that's why I'm here now to talk about it. Because if he wants to cut hair, that's fine. Take it somewhere else, but not in this neighborhood. So that's pretty much what I have to say, because I know that some of the cars will be parking next to us and we're not going to allow it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and he's not we have a club, a community club. They do not attend. He hasn't paid his dues or anything like that.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
No, ma'am. Time's up. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, time's up. All right, anyone else like to speak? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Counts, and I live next door to Mr. Mender.
Okay.
As has been mentioned more than once, the street that we live on is a narrow street. And if you've been there, you can see. If there's an SUV or a regular car coming, it's almost impossible to get by. Our mailbox has been hit numerous times. Today, it's down on the ground because somebody hit it passing by. That's how narrow the streets are. Previously, Mr. Mender said that he just wanted to open this barbershop until he could find a place for his business. I didn't hear any mention as to the progress on that. There's been ample time he could have found a place. Also, as been mentioned earlier, he could get a booth somewhere if he wanted to rent from somebody until he could find a place to open up his business. We live in a residential district. We'd like to keep it that way. So my request is please honor the request of the members of Jones McDonald neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, anyone? Yes. You're good.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Gleaton, and I live on St. Louis Avenue. And we're in a very quiet neighborhood. I'm 75 years old. I don't intend to move. But I cannot see them putting a barber shop in our residential neighborhood. And that is my request. Please do not vote for that, because children walk that area from school. I walk Bonneville Road up there by Perry and C.A. Johnson School. So that is my request. Please do not.
Thank you. All right, anyone else want to speak? Come on, man.
Something different?
Not as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A.W. Goforth, 1811 McAllister Street. I am familiar with Mr. Linder. He lives in the back of my home. Mender. And very nice young man, as far as I know. My question would be, how long would the exception be for? Is this an exception permanently?
So, yeah, you want to
A
explain?
permanent
Once
exception?
it's granted, it would be permanent.
Okay.
Unless the use is vacated for 12 months.
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's permanent unless he were to leave and not operate there. It's there for 12 months beyond. And then if no one else does that same use, then it expires and somebody would have to come back for the board.
Okay. And if another person came with the identical set of circumstances, perhaps another type of business, massage parlor or whatever. Beg your pardon? Yeah. Then they could be granted the same exception.
Anyone could.
Anyone could.
That it doesn't have anything to do with your street or that street.
Right.
Anyone can request a special exception for any change they want to make in any neighborhood in the city of Columbia. It can be a fence, it can be a parking lot extension. I think there's some confusion around what special exception means, and somehow we're not being clear. But I think
if I could
there's
just
some confusion
clarify
around what that means.
Yeah, so if I could just clarify, there are a lot of home occupations that do not require a special exception. So barbershops do, beauty shops do, but a lot of home occupations do not require a special exception.
Okay. So even if there's not a lot of traffic going on, exceptions can be made for other businesses in a residential community. And my concern is the precedent it says. Once you start.
Precedent is specifically excluded. So we take it
Okay.
into account. So if he opens a barber shop and the guy next door wants to open a barber shop and the guy next door to him wants to open a barber shop, that's one of our criteria, is to say, time out, no more. You know, that it's called a proliferation. And so that's something that we really take seriously.
And the reason why I think I want to make it clear, because I think particularly when it comes to historic African-American neighborhoods, we are very concerned about our neighborhoods remaining the same. And when we hear rules that make it sound as if those neighborhoods are going to be changing, then the how the language is used we need to be careful about, so they're not thinking that something could be happening to damage the neighborhood based on the use of the wording we're using when we say special exception. I just want to be clear. That's why I keep wanting to make sure that we understand what we mean, because I think we're thinking that it means that once this happens, anybody, it's a free-for-all. It is not. It's a residential special exception for this young man. If somebody else wants to do something else, they would have to go through the same process. It's not a free-for-all by any means. And it doesn't change the zoning of that neighborhood into commercial. It's just for his home only. It still be a residential neighborhood.
Right. So how does the board determine if a person is eligible for the special exception? Is it a handicap, or they just make application based upon some
We go
hardship?
through this process that we're going through, and then we discuss it.
We have
And
very
and
specific
make a vote.
criteria the
Yeah.
request has to meet prior to approving it. And we'll discuss it. I've got some questions for Mr.
So is-
Mender as well to make sure, because I've only heard one complaint that would make his request, in my mind, not comply or potentially not comply with the special exception. But he addressed it in his comments in his application, which is, so I'm curious to get a little more specific on it. But yeah, so this is the process. He comes to us, if you all have the opportunity to, state your concerns, but then we make sure that he meets these very special criteria. And if he does, then we're going to grant it. If he does not, then we won't grant it.
So only the board sees the special criteria?
No, the criteria is public.
Public.
Anyone she can give you a copy. I can give you my copy. You can find it on the website. It's public.
Okay.
The criteria is public.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Here you go, Scott.
All right, do we have any more new comments?
I think we had a question.
We'll get Mr. Mender back up here. Yeah. All right, so it's closed for comments to his initial application. Mr. Mender went out of turn. We're getting you up here last time. That's my fault. We're going to get you back up here again so the board can ask you questions.
And this is for a rebuttal.
This is for his rebuttal, yep. So please, yep. Before we ask questions, do you have anything, let's try to keep it somewhat brief, but do you have anything new to say just as far as comments to what your neighbors just came back with?
No, sir. I don't, like I said, it's my neighborhood too. It's a quiet neighborhood. I'm not trying to do this and do that, and I'm not trying to do that. Just like the neighbor said, somebody came up and down, probably down the street, and I haven't seen them, but I've seen my neighbor mailbox on the ground. And like I said, sometimes they ride up and down that street and it doesn't make any sense. That's the only thing I say, that's why I wouldn't put people on the side of the street and this, because anything can happen. Those streets, and just like one of the people said, those streets are different. It's just like you go through the newer home owner association, like a subdivision. But the only thing is with that street, you have a certain amount of street, and the next street over, like St. Louis, Pennsylvania, McDonald, you only have a certain amount right there. It's not like you're saying, I'm going around and this, like that.
Yeah. John, do you want to ask him?
Yeah, this, what you were just discussing, can you hear me okay?
Sir?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What you were just discussing was one of the requirements is adequate provisions are made for parking and for loading and unloading. And you addressed it in your comment where you said there is safe and secure parking and proper parking as one customer per appointment will come, and there will not be an overflow. So what I've heard, your neighbors' concerns is that street parking would be an issue. But you're saying there won't be any street parking. It is parking
Yes, because
inside your driveway.
I won't have no street parking, and just like you said, loading and unloading, I would not have that. I would have no loading and unloading. I'll have no reason to have loading and unloading of stuff. And
Okay, no, thank you. That was my only question.
okay.
Y'all got any more questions for him, or? All right, thank you, Mr. Mender.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go into board discussion. So now that I think we've heard everybody. Celia, you got any thoughts?
I do. I have sort of mixed feelings on it. In general, I actually have to have a home occupation to do work on my computer. It's something that's very common. No one comes to my home for me to do my work, but it's still something that you go through to get a business license in the city of Columbia. And actually, the home occupations are part of the historic neighborhoods. The neighborhood I live in, my house was built in 1910. And, in the historic photos of our neighborhood, there is richness to having some of those sort of accessory uses. But again, we have to be thoughtful about the number of people and the way that is played out, whether it's barbering or laundering or interior design. So I think it's unfortunate, the communication that's happened between the applicant and the neighborhood. I feel like there's maybe some
Missed opportunity there.
Some missed opportunities, some misunderstandings, but we're kind of past that at this point. So
I'm in agreement with you, Celia. I think I'm extremely torn here because of the disagreements between neighbors. I'm really confused. On one hand, Mr. Mender, I can't quite understand why Mr. Mender did not speak with the neighborhood association or the club that someone mentioned that they had, or why there was no sit-down conversation with any of those entities prior to applying for the special exception. And at the same time, I can't understand why there will be neighbors and 30 signatures on a paper, and none of those people had a conversation with Mr. Mender either.
When there's a sign in the yard that says...
It's very confusing. Like at some point during this entire 30 days, 60 days, however long it's been, I feel like the two sides should have sat down and said, hey, let me go over there and talk to him, or let me go over there and talk to her or something. And that didn't happen, which is really what this all boils down to, because what it sounds like to me is insane with that I think I'm hearing from you is there's a lot of confusion here, particularly around the word special exception and the use of the word special exception and what that means for what Mr. Mender is trying to do, and the understanding of what the neighborhood has around what he's trying to do. I keep hearing things like it's going to affect parking in our neighborhood, it's going to change the fabric of the neighborhood, but Mr. Mender isn't building a barbershop, nor is he opening a public barbershop that's going to be there for people to drive up and wait and get their haircut.
Yeah, he can't even put a sign in his yard.
He can't even put a sign in his yard that says barbershop. It's not allowed. He's only actually doing something that he's trying to do in order similar to what Celia is saying, by establishing with the city that I have a home occupation so I could have a business license, which is just the right orderly way to go about doing business, which is what most people in his situation would never do. Most people would just say, you know what, just call my phone, come to my house, and let me cut your hair in the kitchen. He's trying to do things the right way and not trying to open a public barbershop by only saying, which is what he said last time, is the place that he worked at, the owner sold the shop. He didn't want to lose his customers, so he wanted the opportunity for his customers to come appointment only to his home until he could be in another shop, because he couldn't afford the money for booth rent at the moment. That is, to me, going above and beyond what I've certainly seen people do in neighborhoods all the time, even with businesses where they're just selling fruit. Most people just won't go get a home occupation and a business license, and he's trying to do things the right way, and still the neighborhood is like, well, it sounds like he's trying to do something other than do things the right way. And so I'm completely torn, because according to the paperwork, what he wants to do is allowed. However, the neighborhood is saying, we don't believe what he's saying he wants to do. We think he's going to do something else. So our job when it comes to being here on the Zoning Board of Appeals is really to make sure that we are caring for what the neighborhood and citizens want to do in their respective neighborhoods. That's where I'm not really sure what to do. I mean, I feel like, I want to say this on the record. I feel like this should have been handled outside of the Board of Zoning and Appeals way before it got to us, and we wouldn't have to make this decision. But alas, here we are. And so I'm hoping that maybe something one of you all can say that can help give me some clarity.
Can I ask a
which way to go?
question of hope? Is there such a thing as an expiration for? Can you build in an expiration for a special exception?
Technically, with a special exception, no. They don't expire. But if anyone different, that would have to come in to do a home occupation, though, if it was someone different that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Sure.
Go ahead. You got
Sure.
comment?
Okay. I heard everything you said, Sherrod, and I agree with it 100%. But I think most of the misconception has to do more with the requirements that Mr. Minder is going to have to comply with, which is going to keep this business small and contained. This is not a barbershop. So I think that this is not your typical barbershop. I think that the impact on the community is going to be quite minor compared to what people's anticipation is. I think he's meeting all the criteria for a special exception. He will still have to comply with all the, the requirements that it takes to run a barbershop or anything. He's got to keep it under 622 square feet of his residence. There's all sorts he can't put a sign up. There's all sorts of still things and requirements that he's going to have to comply with that's going to keep the impact on the neighborhood minor. And I really feel like there's some confusion in that. So, I think that I'm leaning towards being in favor of granting it, and then realizing that a year from now, everybody's going to go, oh, okay, that wasn't that big a deal. We understand it didn't truly impact the fabric of the neighborhood.
Awesome.
If I could just say one thing, just to clarify, back to Celia, your question about expiration. I just want to remind the board that the board can put conditions on a case if they would like to, so.
That was the real question I was asking.
Okay, yeah. So special exceptions in general don't have an expiration date unless if the board would like to place a condition.
Yeah.
How does the board feel about placing a condition, like a 12-month, 6-month condition on Mr. Minder's exception? That's allowable that we can do?
Yes.
And no street parking.
Granted for the period of 12 months. Yeah.
I like that.
I feel better about the no street parking.
Yeah.
Because that's an enforceable code condition.
Marcellus, you got any thoughts?
And at the end of the 6 months, what's the checkpoint at the end of the 6 months? How do we?
Well, just in
Would he
general,
have to come back in front of us in 6 months?
you could ask that he do that in 6 months or whatever time frame. And just in general, too, I want to add that list of conditions that the applicant has to sign for the home occupation is enforceable by our zoning staff. So if the applicant is ever found to be in violation of any of those conditions, and traffic is one of them, and things related to other issues you've been speaking of, and if we're made aware of that, then our zoning staff can go out and check to see if there's any violations.
Could you clarify that for me? So you're saying that if there are any violations to the special exception, the neighborhood could do what now?
So the actual conditions of the home occupation that the applicant signs before they receive their business license.
Okay.
So those conditions, and we keep that on record in our office, if we're made aware that there's a violation, if someone from the neighborhood calls and says, I think they're doing this or whatever, and then if
I'm sorry,
they
slow
are-
down. You're throwing a lot at me. So
Sorry.
If who is made aware?
If zoning staff.
If zoning staff is made aware.
Is made
So
aware.
the neighborhood will have to call the zoning staff
Correct.
to say, hey, he had this special exception that he's not following. Someone from the city, department, code enforcement, somebody would go
It
down?
would be, we have zoning enforcement staff.
Okay.
And so, it's pretty frequent that, or not frequent, but this has happened before. So if they're found to be in violation of one of the conditions of the home occupation, then we would address that by
Okay, so-
violation.
So that sounds like the neighborhood will have some type of recourse if something happens, which I think is important for everyone to know. That's why I want to be clear and say that in the microphone. Thank you.
Was there a question? Okay.
We gotta keep moving. All right, any other, wish you would have talked to the neighborhood a little bit more, but with those conditions, I think that provides us some recourse for the neighborhood. All right, do we want to make any more board discussion? I'm ready to hear a motion if somebody's got one. Celia?
Did we agree on a duration of 12 or 6 months?
That's
Let's
the
do
first thing.
12.
We confident we can do that?
12.
We can put an expiration on it.
Yes.
No.
All right. I'll do it. I move we approve the special exception, subject to all staff comments, with an expiration 12 months from today,
No street parking.
and that there is absolutely no street parking.
No street parking. Yeah,
No
no
comments.
comments.
No comments.
Yeah, we're moving forward. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have was there anything, I think that was, do we have a second?
I feel like that station needs to be restated.
All right,
and then
can
we can
we-
second, yeah.
John, we reinstate the,
Yes, I move that we approve the special exception with an expiration of 12 months from today, and no street parking will be allowed.
yeah. So that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
All right,
No.
all right. One no. Motion's approved. Thank y'all. All right, so next case.
So next one is the Blossom Street.
All right, let's keep it moving, yep.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is case 2023-0024V. It's 408 and 436 Blossom Street, 519 Hugie Street, and 401 Wheat Street. And this is a variance request to the front yard setback standard and the ground floor activity zone standard.
Hey, will y'all please take the conversation outside? Thank you.
I'm going to recuse myself from this case.
Okay.
Should we wait until they're done talking?
Yeah, they're done. All right, would the applicant please come to the podium? Hey, good afternoon.
Leighton Lord at 2416 Terrace Way, Columbia. I'm with Maynard Nexon. I'm the attorney for Subtext. And Bethany Rooney is here to answer any technical questions you all may have.
Perfect.
So, okay, thank you all
Yep.
for hearing us. What we're asking for, and you all might remember, we came before you a while back for a density variance, which you, we're very happy you granted. After the density variance was granted, Subtext went to the planning, and we're back in front of you asking for two very small variances, in my mind, that the planning has necessitated. The first variance is we're asking for a increased setback off of Wheat Street. The district requires 10-foot setbacks all around because it's a very tight urban design, but we're asking for it to be increased, which is usually opposite of what you're asking for, increased on Wheat Street from 10 to 40. And the reason we need it increased from 10 to 40 is there's a very large transmission line that doesn't serve this property but goes across the back. That would be very difficult to relocate, probably impossible to bury. What Subtext has done very creatively is they're going to now turn that corner of Williams and Wheat into a public dog park, public infrastructure. Residents can use it, anybody can use it, but it'll be a grassed, treed dog park on the corner. And I think this shows it very well, as you guys can see. It'll be landscape back there with benches and all that kind of thing. The second variance request, so the first is going from 10 to 40. The second is we're asking for a variance from the requirement in this district that Williams and Blossom be street activated. And under the Columbia Code, that means you need commercial use or non-residential uses up to 60% of Williams and Blossom. Now, if you grant the first request for the variance, the dog park, I believe, will help increase that, right? So we don't have that in it. So the dog park will actually give us a little bit more activation on Williams. As you can see from our application, Subtext already has 26% of Williams activated. So the variance is to allow us to have 26 that follows your code, and the rest of it will be activated residential units that open onto the street. I don't know if we have a picture of that. Okay, you can see this very well. As you guys can see, most of the multifamily housing that's predominantly student around town, the first floor is, you don't open the first floor onto the street. You enter from inside the building. So what Subtext has done in order to activate 100% of Williams and Blossom is they are going to have units that open onto the street, have a little balcony, a stairway, a little area for a chair, to sort of give the feel to Blossom and Williams that it is activated. It's not a blank wall, which is what the statute's trying to prevent. Blossom is actually pretty close to compliant. Blossom's already going to be 51.8% activated under the statute, so we don't really need much more there, probably about 9%. But as mentioned, the entire Blossom Street will be activated because it'll have leasing, it'll have student study areas, but it will also have these units that open onto Blossom. So we feel like Subtext has very creatively figured out a way not only to activate 60% of the street, but activate 100% of these two streets. And these are the two streets you'll really see coming into the project. But we do need a variance because, as Hope will tell you, the residential units opening don't qualify under the statute. But we think they meet the intent of the statute and the intent of the district to keep the sidewalks active. And again, the reason we need this is we do not feel that this area has gotten to the point where it can really support retail, restaurants, that type of thing. We've got a retail space of 2,500 square feet where hopefully we'll get hospitality, a restaurant, a burger joint, pizza, something like that to go in there. But this area, as you all probably know, there's nothing really around it. And we think it's probably several years away from really supporting retail, hospitality, that type of thing. So what we don't want is to put a lot of retail in there and have papered up windows for the next 5 to 10 years. We don't think that will be helpful to the district and the development of the district. So it's needed because we're sort of pioneers in this area of town, and we want to make it look good, make it look active. And we have reached out to all the neighborhoods, and I don't think anybody's here from the neighborhood, so I want to look around before I say, but we have some letters in your packets. We reached out to all of the people that came last time about the density, and we talked to all of them. Several of them gave us letters in support. Several of them said they didn't think it was an issue and they weren't going to show up. So we were glad. We think this meets all the requirements of the city's variance code. We go through those in our application, but I'll quickly hit a couple of the high points. We believe it's very much in harmony with the area, which is an important part of granting a variance. And we believe it's in harmony with the area because we're going to essentially activate 100% with these opening units onto the street. And we are going to have commercial uses. So we believe it's very much in harmony. The public dog park that the setback will allow, we believe will be a public infrastructure support for the whole community. We don't think it's any detriment to anyone. We think it's actually helps the neighborhood. And none of these, we believe, were caused by subtext. This area is coming up, it's coming together, and because it won't support retail, won't support restaurants in the level, we do not believe that's a developer issue, but it will change. It could change in the future. And the need for the setback is very much because of existing infrastructure in the form of a large transmission line. So we believe we meet the requirements. And I'm willing to answer any questions or let Bethany come up and answer any super technical questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very familiar with it just from the last time you guys came through, so I appreciate it. I've got a couple just basic questions. The second variance for the percentage that needs to be commercial space, what about on UG Street? What's
There's no requirement on UG.
There's no requirement on UG Street.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure. It's just these two streets have the requirement. I'm not sure why UG. Yeah, Bethany can.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon.
Bethany Rooney, 4020 Royal Oak Circle, Mountain Brook, Alabama. I'd like to add for Hugie, correct, there isn't a requirement for it to be activated, but we will also have the dwelling units opening up, so that side of the street will also be 100% activated as well.
Okay. Yeah, just didn't realize it had the same requirements, so. With the residential coming onto the street, is that going into specific units or is that going into a common area?
No, those would go into individual units. Those units would have access in the corridor within the building, but also the direct access out to the street.
Okay. And so sort of back to what Mr. Lord was saying in the presentation, is there in the future maybe a plan to convert some of that ground floor space to commercial once the demand gets higher, or do you see that not happening?
So I guess that would be a matter of, the finances and whether or not there was a demand. If there was a demand, anything's possible. I mean, you could convert the space if needed.
Okay, but the intent is...
The intent is not to have that space available at this time, no.
Okay. And then just for clarification, can we go back to a couple of those renderings? I just want to make sure So this retail, that's at the corner of Williams and Blossom. Well, this one right here, the leasing, that's at UG and Blossom right there? Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes, this is the Blossom Street view.
Okay. And then that retail, is Williams and Blossom. Okay.
And leasing qualifies under the code as activation, just like a gym would also. And we, at one point, had a gym on the first floor, but it makes more sense to move it upstairs.
Yeah.
So those technically meet the statute, and that's what people are doing, is putting leasing and gyms and study areas there.
To show some activity there. Yeah. Okay. Do y'all got any questions for him? Or?
Actually, I do have one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Celia.
No, go for it.
I was going to ask you. Mentioned that you had been talking to the neighbors in the area, and there was several letters and communication back and forth. And you mentioned that some of them didn't see any problems with this special exception you all were requesting today. Were there any objections to the special exception that you heard from the neighborhoods, and were there anything they were asking you all to do in reference to the special exception?
They asked the same question the chairman asked. Could you convert it later? And we said, it's not impossible. It could happen. This leasing unit could be a commercial unit in the future, possibly, but we said we don't know, but it's not impossible. That was the one question that they asked.
Okay. Thank you.
If you make the dog park not public, I'm just trying to make sure we've got our numbers, because public dog parks are something else. Just in terms of liability and use and, sort of inviting the public onto your property.
So it does have to be a public park to meet the code for the 60%, yeah.
Okay.
And that was the plan, right?
That was the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Most dogs behave in a dog park. Mine does not.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
And as far as, the majority of our properties, a lot of students do bring their pets, to school. We would have public dog, or not a public, but we would have a dog park space anyway, regardless for our students. We're just offering to make it public and available to the neighborhood. And I don't think that there would be too many neighbors probably that would come use it necessarily. I don't know. I'm not sure, but we wanted to make it available to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I would have concerns.
Yeah, I think my concerns there, just to be stated, maybe this is better for board discussion. I'm sorry. I recuse what I was about to say. No questions from me.
All right, I guess we don't have anyone from the public, so there's nothing to rebut.
Y'all needed a little break.
Yeah. All right. You want to go into board discussion? All right, let's go into board discussion. So,
yeah, Celia, could you clarify what your concern is with the public dog park? Because I got a feeling it's kind of rubbing up against the same thing I'm thinking, but I just want to kind of see what you're thinking first.
Having been a member of a not public dog park that you have to have membership to, it's just, I don't know, it seems risky from their standpoint to have a public dog park. Those are just,
Can I ask one? Can I bring them back up here for one question? Yeah, Ms. Rooney or Mr. Lord, let me go.
I don't know.
Let me ask one question on that.
We could make it private. We thought the city would want it to be public. So
Yeah, we can certainly fence it in and make it private and.
Well, I was going to ask, are y'all going to deed that over to the city, or is that going to still stay part of the, are y'all going to still own that?
I guess we hadn't really come to a conclusion on how that would play out necessarily, but we're flexible.
Okay.
But again, to your point, use, it would meet the code. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the ownership. The use of it could be public and meet the code.
Say that again. So it has to be public in order for it to meet the code?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. It would either have to be a commercial use or a public, civic, or institutional use.
For it to meet the 60% code.
To meet the 60%.
for the activity zone, for the activity area. But I mean, you guys, we could make it private and you guys could just say that's fine. You don't want to count it.
I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, thank y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing that mainly because we thought that's what the city would want.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I think my my concern was considering the location so close to that ballpark, with the amount of traffic that comes to that ballpark, and having a public dog park in that proximity to the amount of people that visit that ballpark, that was my concern when it came to the public use of that particular dog park. I mean, if I brought my dog and I came early, I would certainly go over there. I'm just saying. Yeah, I didn't know if that's what you were thinking earlier.
I don't think dogs are going to be allowed to run out of there, though.
Oh, no, that's not what I mean. I just meant, if people are coming to the game early and they have their pets with them, it's a dog park right there. I would go hang out there for a while till the gates were open. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a plus, I would think. You got that option.
I don't know. According to Celia, no, that could be a problem.
Well, I think from the standpoint of the variances, I mean, the first one absolutely makes sense because there's a big transmission line there. I think the setback from that's even larger than what they were requesting. So that makes sense to me. And I think it fits in with what they're trying to do. I mean, they're going to have some retail, some amenities there, public park. I mean, I think it activates that whole block. So that's just my thoughts.
I can't imagine living in one of those units, but that's,
Well, that's all right. You don't
that's
have
not me.
to. Any other comments?
I think we're ready for a motion.
All right, let's hear a motion. You got it, Short?
Ooh. All right, let me give this a shot. Motion to grant the variance to the maximum front yard setback standard in the MC zoning district and a variance to the ground floor activity zone percentage standard in the OVID Everlake district for 408 and 436 Blossom Street, 519 Huger Street, 401 Wheat Street.
Subject to staff comments.
Subject to staff comments.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion's approved. Thank you all very much.
The dog park counts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not a site plan review, so as long as the use remains public, then it meets the requirement.
Yeah.
And they don't need a variance.
All right, anything else on the agenda? I think we're done. All right, motion to adjourn? All right. We're adjourned. All in favor say aye.
Aye.